It's like the wrong kind of rich. It's like, I'll be rich off of chocolate. So even to this day, I still battle with that inner fat kid that's like, hey, I want to have the cake. I can eat the entire pizza. A part of me likes that challenge, but that's why the systems are there. Okay, after this, grab the piece of gum. I already have my tea made. So I sip a bit of my ginger tea. All of a sudden, my palate completely resets. And now I don't desire the same food as before. I don't desire continuing to eat. And so it's small things like that that add up that make the biggest differences.
Welcome back to the Money Mindset and Mentoring Podcast. We've got Gil and Brad here. They're from Empowering Men. Empowermen.co is their website. What they do is they help busy men look at focusing on their money and their weight and their fitness. And guys, I am so ready to dial into what you guys have because it is a sincere passion of mine. And especially since Gil, you and I share a new founded passion for you, a long founded passion for me, for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So, man, we've already got off on the right page. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks so much, Steve. Pleasure to be here. Glad we can make it happen, and hope we could serve your audience the best we can.
Beautiful. Well, I appreciate it. So to start off, we'd talk about a little bit what got you into the mindset of going down this direction. And so where did the foundations come from?
I mean, personally, both health and finance have been two major themes in my life, along with personal development. But you'll hear from Gil. He came from the other side of health. I came from being an overweight kid, always wanting to date the more attractive girl that was out of my league. And it really just came from, all right, if I can get in better shape, then I'll have more confidence. Then maybe I'll be able to date the girl that everyone wants to date. So it started there. And then, of course, it leads to, all right, well, I got to dress better. I have to have social skills. And then it's, well, if I can get better at money, then that's going to open up a lot more doors. And so when you look at how health and wealth is combined, where the better you are with your money, the more you can afford organic groceries and better health protocols. And then the worse you are with your money, the more you're stuck with just the Pop-Tarts and the bad food, which is going to limit your performance, which is going to make it worse for you. It was just one of those natural combinations where I found that, hey, these two things are so interconnected. And once you have both of them taken care of, life really opens up.
I totally agree with that. I think when you look at your health as the underpinning to allow your body and your mind to work at the pace that it needs to. But money is sort of the gives you velocity to all of that. Because if you're trying to be successful in anything and you want to open up opportunity, money is the key to open up the opportunity to whatever you're looking at doing. And I always say, like, a lot of people think, oh, well, money doesn't matter and all this other stuff. And I said, well, to make money matter, you need to make money matter. So in other words, money isn't the currency. The currency is the impact of the money that you have. So that's my belief. So I'm 100% with you on that. Gil, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, man, money is a tool, buys you time. So if you don't think money is important, then you're really wrong. Because it buys you time to do whatever you love. Yeah, my background too is different because I was always very healthy growing up. So for me, food is just like when I eat for purpose. I don't eat so much like for the satisfaction of it. I like, what is this going to do to me? It's going to enhance my performance. I'm going to look in a certain way. Like I eat very intentional. So I know that Brad is more of an emotional eater, but for me, it's just everything I do is as a purpose.
I love that. Eating intentionally. I think a lot of times we do things and we don't realize why we do them. And not to pick on Brad, but the idea that we do things because of emotion, sometimes emotion will lead us astray. But using logic, using patterns, using discipline, I think that's the thing that kind of keeps us on that point of doing things intentionally. I love the idea of eating intentionally, and I would take that further to everything in life intentionally.
What's interesting is that growing up, because I was an only child of immigrant parents who I didn't really have much of a relationship with, because they come from South Africa, that's where I was born, and then I'm thrust into American culture, and I can't really rely on them to show me the ways. And I wasn't surrounded by family. I didn't have brothers or sisters. I didn't have many friends in my neighborhood. So it was video games and it was food. They were always there for me. And it was very tough to break that because it's like saying goodbye to a good friend. But then there's a point where you go, all right, well, even if I have these tendencies and even if I love my sweet and I could eat a lot and all this, it came down to, all right, I got to put some systems in place to ensure that that's going to be stronger than my willpower or my will to keep eating. And so even just like to this day, I'll have my peppermint gum, or it's like a cinnamon gum right next to my dessert, which is just a couple chocolate squares. And the second I grab the 2 or 3 chocolate squares, I grab that one piece of gum, because I know if I don't grab that piece of gum, I'm going back for more chocolate. Chocolate's good and it's not filling, so I can eat and eat and eat. I'm not one of those people that are like, oh, just a bite, oh, it's so rich. No, I'm like, oh, it's rich, that's great, I want more of it. So that's
I want to
why
be rich.
even to this day, yeah, it's like the wrong kind of rich. It's like, I'll be rich off of chocolate. So even to this day, I still battle with that inner fat kid that's like, hey, I want to have the cake, I can eat the entire pizza. A part of me likes that challenge, but that's why the systems are there. Okay, after this, grab the piece of gum. I already have my tea made. So I sip a bit of my ginger tea. All of a sudden, my palate completely resets. And now I don't desire the same food as before. I don't desire continuing to eat. And so it's small things like that that add up that make the biggest differences.
I love that idea of the tea. I've never actually thought about that before, and that's a beautiful way of saying you're gonna go in a pattern, but then you're gonna put a pattern interrupt. And that pattern interrupt was that tea to sort of break that palate to say, no, now we're cleansed off to the next. And by doing that, you've now moved on to the next thing. So you're not going to double down on those brownies or whatever else you're having, because you've now moved on to the next palate. And I think that in a lot of things that we're doing in life, that idea of having that break, whether it's in social media messaging, we use that all the time as a marketing strategy, or whether it's just in how we're handling our day and handling the big things in our day, by programming in those specific breaks. I think that's really insightful. That's very interesting. I love it.
And I mean, I appreciate it, Steve. And for me, it's just like, if you've ever brushed your teeth and then being like, oh, I don't feel like it anymore. It's more just, I don't even feel like it. It's not like, oh, here's this crazy strategy. It's more just, that would be gross. I brushed my teeth. I already flossed, right? I can't have the Cheetos anymore. Too bad. I already washed my hands. I can't have the Cheetos because then, I don't want to get my hands dirty again. And sometimes it's just adding that little bit of friction, just like in Atomic Habits, what we love, that's our book of the month. We talk about it because it's so applicable. Add that friction to the things that we want to add a lot of friction to, and then we do the exact opposite for the things that we do want to do.
Yeah, a lot of people talk a lot about the idea of making the frictionless transaction in business and that sort of thing. And I think what you're saying there is, we always focus on the things that we want to go towards, but then also putting a pattern of distraction or friction to those things that we want to get away from. And I think that is a very impactful message to me.
Yeah, some people, and we all creatures of habit, right? Like we just have to create the habits and systems that work for us. It's funny because when me and Brad talk, we are like kind of very different when it comes to the thinking. Like for me, I don't dwell with food because like my goals are this direction. The foods I want to eat are this direction, so I don't think about it and I just do what I have to do. So for me, that comes easy because if it doesn't align with my goals, then I don't think about it. It's the same like going to the gym. Like, I don't feel like most of the times I don't feel like going to the gym, but I just go because just I treat it like a job. It's just part of my well-being, so therefore I don't dwell and I just do it. And actually, if I'm going to the gym and I feel like I don't really want to be here, at the moment I say that, then okay, today's going to be the best workout I ever done in my life, because I just can allow my mind to take charge. So that's kind of my thinking.
Yeah. So when you look at those two things that you said, which are really interesting, the first thing you talked about is, something that I kind of have a lot of discussions around is, if anybody's ever having a challenge in life, I break it down to 3 principles. First principle is attitude. Second principle is approach. And the third is activity. And a lot of times people focus at the activity as the fundamental level. But I think what you're saying is, and you're in agreement with me, is that you focus on the attitude first, which is the goals. And if it doesn't direct towards the goals, the activity is going to shift and the approach is going to shift. And 9 times out of 10, most coaches or anybody in the coaching space focus on activities, where the things that really solves it is the attitude side of things. And then it's not the mumbo jumbo of the attitude side of things, which goes back to what you were talking about, which is discipline. And I firmly believe, and this is Brad, you and I were chatting about this earlier, is that the idea that discipline it wins over motivation, because discipline shows up when motivation doesn't. And that goes to the nice little, you had the relay race discussion there, Brad. So I want you to kind of flush that one out because I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Well, you brought to my awareness, Steve, that there are 4 runners in a relay race. I'm going to have to think of a 4th, but I think of it as a 3-person relay race where it's the beginning of the year, it's middle of January. So this is the time that a lot of people actually fall off the horse with their New Year's resolutions. And the reason why is because they relied on motivation, right? Beginning of the year, new year, new me. It's 2024 is my year. Like those Instagram memes you see up. 2022 was practice. 2023 was a warm up. 2024 is the year. It's like, no, it doesn't matter. You could use January 1st as a little psychological boost, sure, because you see other people attacking their goals, and now the environment is a bit more supportive of healthier patterns. But motivation just gets you out the door. So to me, it's the first runner of the relay race. You're sprinting, you're excited, right? New year, new me. This is the year I'm going to lose the weight. I'm going to get out of debt. I'm going to land the new job. I'm going to launch the podcast. I'm going to start the business. And then all of a sudden, because that relay runner gets tired and all of a sudden the novelty's worn off, it needs to pass the baton on to the next runner. And to me, that is the systems and habits. So the motivation is great up until the point where the habits can take over. And once the habits take over and the systems are there, then it doesn't matter if you feel like it or not, because you get out of bed and then all of a sudden your workout clothes are right there on the end of the bed because you put it there the night before. You put your shoes on, you have the little bit of coffee that's waiting for you already, you sip it and you don't think about it. And then there's a point where it's ingrained in you to do these things so long, like let's say it's running, that a coworker of yours goes up to you and says, "Hey, do you consider yourself a runner?" And while in the past you would have said, "No, of course not," now you actually say, "Yeah, actually, I'm a runner. I've run for the last 60 days, 90 days straight. I guess I'm a runner." And then when the identity starts backing it up, now it's way easier to stick with the habits and the systems because now everything is aligned, everything is helping each other, and now motivation's irrelevant. It's like left in the dust. That runner is sipping on the Gatorade, waiting for the other runners to come back to the finish line and celebrate. But it really comes down to just understanding motivation's great, it's important, but it's just the first runner of the relay race. We got to have the systems and then let that lead to a permanent identity shift.
Yeah, I love that. And that was the last runner that you were talking about, which was the identity shift, which if you want to kind of explain that one a little bit, because I thought that was pretty cool.
I mean, for me, it's like and I know this is me being vulnerable. I still look at myself as a fat kid that has lost a lot of weight versus a healthy man that has given up all identity with loving food and it being a companion of mine. But the way that Gil looks at his food, it's just, I'm a healthy person, I'm an athlete. So of course he makes the right decision because his identity is so ingrained in that belief system that the idea of picking up cake or alcohol or cigarettes or anything like that would just be absurd because it would contradict who he believes he is at his core. And so, for me, that it's just the more the habits I do on a more consistent basis, the more I'm lending myself to that identity. So right now, my identity is I love food, but I can balance it in my life. I'm not trying to be an athlete. I'm not an athlete, but I'm a guy that loves to eat and also live a balanced life where I want the best of everything. We'll see if that changes over the years, but that's where it's at.
Yeah, that's interesting because I there's a conundrum there that I want to kind of understand a little bit because, Gil, when you're in a situation where you're going out and you're social, you're out with your friends and that sort of thing, and if we talk about you've easily passed the baton from motivation to habits and from habits to your what you identify as. Now, the last thing that I found interesting when you talk about the whole thing that when you're doing a New Year's resolution, that there is a sort of a social awareness that this is the time of year where we make these things, and people are like, "Oh yeah, you're making all," and it's sort of assumed that everybody's gonna this month. I pity the people who own the places that are the fast food places because they're missed this month, but next month everybody's back, so they're fine. But I'm looking at you, Gil, and because you've made that as part of your who you are and who you identify with as yourself, you look at your social circles when you're out in the evening and people are out and they're saying, let's go to the all-you-can-eat buffet, and you're saying, okay, well, I'm going to stick to whatever I have there. The social pressures, I'm wondering if they're less social pressures because you've created that icon for yourself than maybe for Brad, when you go out And people are like, well, Brad does really love some brownies. And so that maybe you'd have a higher degree of social pressure to maybe take a path of, that you didn't want to choose. Gil, what's your thoughts?
Well, I stopped caring about what people think
Nice.
long time ago, and I feel like the older I get, the less I care, honestly. Like I honestly, I couldn't care less what other people think about what I'm doing. I did have a lot of that social pressure in the very beginning of my career as an international model as well, because everyone drinks, everyone does drugs, everyone is year round of these things all the time, and you always hear like, "Come on, man, you're so young, like enjoying your life," but they're not understanding that I'm enjoying my life. I don't need alcohol or drugs to be happy. I feel like if you're needing of something else, now you're dependent on something else for your state of mind, for state of being. So I never felt the pressure of drinking or doing anything else because of someone else. And I think, we noticed that even when we have like new members, like new students, they wanted to lose weight or whatever, the first day of that interview, when you understand why they're doing, why they want to lose weight, why they want to, tie their finances, you can immediately tell if these people are going to be successful or not. So my why, like the way I eat, the way I perform in terms of my physical activities, whether it's working out, jiu-jitsu. Sometimes me and Brad talk all the time. He's like, "Do you just went to the gym for 2 hours and now you're going to do an MMA class and then you're going to do a jiu-jitsu?" Like, that's 3.5 hours a day, dude. That's insane. It's like, it's not insane to me because I got used to it. And the more you do it, and I think this applies to business as well, the more things you're involved to, the more things you have in your plate, you just get used to it. It's just another level, right? So for me, it's just like if your why is big enough, if your why is important enough, then that won't be that hard to keep those habits and systems, right? If you're trying to be healthy because you want to be present for your kids are really important to you. So then you're doing it for yourself, but also for your kids because you want to be around when they get older. So that why becomes so important. Then when you're like making decisions on what you're eating, it becomes irrelevant. It doesn't have that weight anymore.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense when you look at building a why out, and when you encompass more people in your why, the more powerful it gets. And I think that's just a human construct, is that the more that we can care about other people and that our impact is impacting them almost even sometimes more than it's impacting us, we actually act greater and we hold a higher degree of responsibility to ourselves. So I think that's actually a very important thing. Brad?
There's something I want to add, which is the power of environment. And a lot of the guys that we work with, they're not surrounded by acai bowl places and gyms and fitness studios. I live in the middle of West Hollywood, which, for better or worse, you got a lot of health, you got a lot of vanity, and you see people that invest in both. Well, I'm going to the gym and I'm working out 3 hours a day, and then I'm getting my Botox here and I'm getting my BBL there, and maybe you have to Google what BBL is, but it's normalized. So what's normal for me in Southern California here is not normal for someone in Buffalo, New York, or in Louisiana, or in Dallas, or in whatever place. And so I think a lot of times it's just a matter of what is socially acceptable in my direct environment. And then we kind of go in that direction, because who wants to be the black sheep of any place? I'm pretty sure if you look up human psychology and just what has kept us alive is just being in tribes and in groups. And so if everyone else is watching the game on the weekend, drinking a bunch of beer, and then going out and partying and then eating, just doing all that kind of stuff, if that's normal, well, what are your options? You get to be at home by yourself and be away from social interaction and connection, or you kind of say, all right, well, what's worse? I guess I'd rather just be with them and be friendly with these people and have connection, even if my health and my finances suffer. And so what's great is that now with the internet, if you do live in some rural places or some unhealthy environments, if you can't find that locally, if it's too far away physically for you to drive and be in those neighborhoods, be in those groups, you can go online. You can find groups on meetup.com. You can find events on Eventbrite and Facebook groups and programs like ours, where you could say, hey, I feel like the black sheep of my environment because I'm a father that actually wants to get in great shape, and all the other dads just seem to be content with fantasy football and just doing their thing. And then you say, hey, we're with a bunch of fathers and husbands and busy professional men that want the same things. We're just scattered around the country. But when you log on online and you're on the Zoom calls and you see each other, we got something special.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of the times to enable to get even to the step further, there's a guy, gosh, I forget his name, but he says, "Show me your 5, and I'll show you your future." And that to me, I think, is extremely important, because if you surround yourself with people that are greater than you find yourself doing greater things. And so, as much as we like to say that we don't want to be impacted by our surroundings, I think that if we allow ourselves to say, let's control what our surroundings are and choose the surroundings that we want to be impacted by, then we're going to have a greater outcome again, rather than just looking internal to ourselves and say that, that is going to be the only source of inspiration for us. So by growing yourselves, and I think that's what you do for your community, is be that external source for them, so that they can reach out and say, no, I've now got somebody in my circle that thinks differently, that can pull me out of the space that I'm in.
That goes hand in hand with accountability too, because it's just, if you provide an environment that has a higher standard than what you're used to, that's accountability indirectly. It's saying, hey, you either rise to this level or we can't work together. We can't be friends. This is the standard. This is where the bar is set right now. And whether we mention it or not, when you see how we behave, how we lead, how we operate, if that doesn't work for you, it's just not a good fit. And it'll feel awkward if it's trying to happen and it's not supposed to. So, we focus on accountability, connection, and environment just because we know the knowledge is out there. Whether you want to get out of debt, whether you want to lose weight, people got out of debt and lost weight in the 80s and early 90s. And they had to go to a library and try to find a book. They had to go to a Barnes and Nobles. They had to do something to actually find a book and go through it and read it. And now we have all of that on Google, on ChatGPT. All the information is there, and yet people are still in debt, still overweight, still depressed, still not taking the necessary action. So really, what is going to lead people to taking this action consistently? And that's what we found, is the connection, accountability, and environment.
Yeah, and I think you actually hit two things that I'm going to put in two categories that I think are really interesting. There's a school in the States that teaches in this mechanism, and they teach there. I think it's the future of education. What they're doing is all of the fundamentals of teaching is being done by AI. So, they'll have a classroom of, say, 100 kids. And the great thing about AI is it can move at the pace that whatever the student is, individually, as a one-to-one relationship. And then what the teachers do is they don't become teachers anymore, is they become coaches. And so, because we learn from two different things, we learn from actually the knowledge transfer, but then we also learn from the connection. And I think a coach gives to those two things. You have a connection with the individual. Look, you're not going to learn from somebody that you're not connected to. It's just not going to happen. If they can't relate, you can't feel that there's some sort of, and it can be something through a book. It can be something you can get connection through, whatever maybe their story is or anything like that. Maybe that's what you connect to, or them as a person. And I think that idea of you being there as part of that community as a person, you could underpin transfer of data using whatever mechanisms that's the most efficient. But by providing that connection, that gives that next level of being able to exceed at learning and growing.
Yeah, man, you'll be in a bubble, and I agree with that. Like, the environment is very important. Like, there is studies that talk about, like, kids being around in neighborhoods where they're wealthy, even if they come from like a poor background, they still excel in life because the environment are richer, are wealthier. So then they think the same. You kind of pick up on each other consciousness and environment. But you're going to be in a bubble regardless. If you watch the news every day, and if your friends go out drinking every day, that's your environment. That's what you're going to be. You're going to become a product of your environment. So if that's the case, you can create your own bubble. Like Brad was saying, like, you can be a part of a community, a tribe, or whatever. You are whatever you feed your mind to. So, and that's kind of what we rely to, because we know that the information is out there. You can have all the information in the world, but what really that works is that accountability, that person that you're going to report to. And also for social pressure, right? If you're in a group of 20 people, and last week you said you're going to be running 3 or 4 miles every morning, and then you show up the next Monday accountability call and you say, I didn't do it, everyone's going to be looking at you like, yeah, don't complain if you don't see your results, because you're not doing what you're supposed to. So that social pressure, that person to report to, the accountability aspect, that's really what giving people results.
I think that's beautiful. I think the idea that, you have that community that everybody answers to. I'm part of the 10X community with Grant Cardone. And one of the things, I was just on a call before our chat, and just sitting there and saying, okay, what books did we go through? What chapters did we go through? What is the information that we received? How did we interpret it? And every person has to answer specifics around that. So when it comes to your turn and you got to talk about the specifics of something within the narrative that you were supposed to read, if you didn't do it, I mean, you're sitting there not looking very good. And you can do that maybe once, but the next time you're either not going to show up and you're going to self-select out of the group, or you're going to show up double time and do a double on the next one to make sure that you make up for lost time on that one. So I'm 100% with you on that. When I look at for what you guys do for your clients, if we're talking about the interrupts that maybe you do into people's lives or some of the messages that you give, what are sort of maybe top 2 or top 3 things that you could impart onto the community that people need to look for to make the change in their life?
I mean, we've had some guys lose a lot of weight very quickly. And I think it's because they were just doing things so wrong before. It just wasn't it was a lack of care. It was just, I'm going with the motions. I'm not intentional at all. There was zero intention with food, with time, with drinking, with anything. And then just saying, okay, I'm going to be intentional from now on. I'm going to be more aware of what I'm eating. I'm going to be more aware of what calories. Same with spending. I think that's the cool thing, is that if you get better with your health, you can get a lot better with your finances. If you get a lot better with your finances, you're going to get a lot better with your health, because you apply the same thing to lose 100 pounds as you do to get out of $100,000 in debt. Okay, let's bring awareness to your spending. Let's just bring awareness when you spend. Write it down. Where do you check for it? When's the last time you looked over your credit card statement? When you eat food, let's look at the calories. Let's just write all this stuff down. And then once they're aware of it, they're like, oh my God, I thought I was having 2,000 calories a day, da, da, da. And then I learned there's a lot of calories in a tablespoon of olive oil. I'm like, yeah, olive oil is healthy when you're not drinking it by the gallon. So just that understanding of, all right, become aware of it, and now we can take the right directions. But I think it could be very frustrating when you try to take these actions without understanding the dynamics of what your life is actually like and the actions you're taking. And you get frustrated thinking, I'm sacrificing all this and nothing's happening. But when you really get a clear picture, I think that's just a good starting point, because then you could really see, all right, you are busy, but you got an hour right here every Tuesday and Thursday. You got 15 minutes. You have an hour and a half drive to work every single day that you're listening to talk radio or music instead of putting in the right information. Like, these are golden opportunities. So I think a lot of people, they need that that external source, that person on the outside, to really look at their situation and say, hey, you think you don't have options, but you actually have some really great opportunities to at least get the ball rolling.
Yeah, I love that as a topic. I think, to summarize, it's success requires attention, right? And so whatever you want to be successful at, you actually have to pay attention to it. The more attention you pay to it, the more successful you'll be at. I mean, if you're trying to solve a problem with money and you never look and try to balance reconcile your bank statements, I mean, there's going to be a problem with that, because it's going to be run away on your expenses. One of the things, it's a little hack that I talk to people about expenses, and this is something we talk in our space. Just as a side note, I always think that when it's an expense problem, instead of looking to the problem that you have, look to find bigger problems. So in other words, if I have $100,000 in debt and I want to get rid of that, why don't I try to figure out how I can solve $1 million debt problem? That $100,000 debt problem is going to go away real fast. So by marginalizing the problem that I have, by looking to bigger problems that I might find, I mean, if I used to have $750,000 in debt, in government debt, back in 2014. My business had shut down. It was a terrible year for me. We just had our second child. We went through absolute horrible times. And I could either succumb to the pressures of that, or I could say, well, what am I going to do about it? Well, to make, $750,000 look small, if I made 10 million, well, 750 is pretty small then, right? So why don't I just go make 10 million then? So then I just amped up my goals of saying I need to hit higher as an elevation of my targets. And now all of a sudden my problem seems very small.
One thing I'll add, it's crazy how that might be mind-blowing to a lot of people, and yet there's a group of people out there, the 5%, the 2%, that's just all they know. Like they're just in that world where, of course, they don't use $100, $1,000, $2,000, $10,000. It's literally just, 100K or a million or 10 million in terms of measurements. And honestly, living in LA, that's one thing I noticed when I moved from Hollywood, which was in my mind the other side of the railroad tracks, to West Hollywood. Is the conversation was, I don't know how I'm going to afford rent. You overhear that, to we need to raise another 3.4 million or the deal's off. And then you're just like, oh, wow. Okay. So both of them have a little bit of a challenge, but one challenge is worth, 300,000 more than the other, or, 30,000 more than the other challenge.
Yeah, that's right. Just look for the bigger problems. Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes one of the things is just to believe you can, because there's someone out there is listening to you saying like, yeah, I mean, I had $750,000 in debt. Maybe I should just go make 10 million. Like, yeah, right, right. People are like, yeah, how are you going to do that, right? And for people, it's just to believe they can. And again, that's why a mentor really helps, because someone that been there, whether it's losing weight or being fit, you just follow those habits, right? If you want someone that's really fit, you just look at what they do daily, right? Like what time you get up, what you eat, what kind of activities you do, what kind of foods are you eating, all that stuff, right? And even when we're talking to these guys, it feels sometimes like almost an intervention, right? Like Brad was saying, oh, I don't have enough time. Well, let me see your schedule. That's why this is such a beautiful thing, because it's so personalized, it's so personal to you, right? It's not like we have a system for everybody the same. We go in people's lives, okay, what time you get up, what time you spend time with your family, when you get out of work, and based on your schedule, we find times that you can be learning, new material, that is atomic habits, to understand how habits forming works and how can you improve your life that way. Then there's the nutrition part, and people are like, yeah, I'm eating this. This is not that bad. I was like, can you read the ingredients? Oh, I don't know even what it means. If you don't know what the ingredient means, most likely it's garbage. That's like GMO, that's like cancer, right? And then when they start understanding that, like, oh, so I ate this little thing, that means I need to be like 45 minutes on the treadmill just to burn this little thing that I didn't even like it that much. So it's just more that perception of understanding why you do what you do, be more, effective with your time management, and just go in the right direction.
Yeah, I think, for me, when I was at that point, I drank a lot. I ate a lot. I was 240 pounds. I didn't really work out. I just I played rugby every once in a while, but, I wasn't really playing competitive rugby at that time. And my biggest pivot was I went into a gym, Mass Academy, which is in Cambridge, amazing gym. And it does Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and MMA. I can't even remember that sort of inception point of saying, why did I make that choice? But as soon as I made that choice, I immediately started getting my health on track, which was my eating. I immediately started, I work out still. I blew my ACL, so I'm on a little bit of a hiatus for a little bit, but about 20 hours a week is what I work out. And people go, you're insane for working 20 hours a week. I'm like, I think I don't work out enough. And because I'd like to just do more. If I could work out all day 24/7, I would. My biggest problem is not working out, it's recovery. I don't give time for that. But what it did is it got me in a path of habits. So that goes back to the relay, is I had the motivation that I need to make a change because of that would happen in my business life, but that promoted a change in my physical life. And then my physical life then fed back into my business life because I was able to get rid of all of those problems, buy lots of real estate. We now own, multiple companies, and life is in a way different paradigm than what it was before. And so, but it all because of the ecosystem of health and building wealth through having really good habits. And people always say, what was the secret? I'm like, discipline. That's all it really was. It just broke down to discipline. When you're sleeping, I'm working. When you're out partying, I'm working. When you're just hanging out watching TV, guess what? I'm working. Right. I still spend time with my kids. We go on lots of vacations and that sort of thing, but it's all, to summarize what you said before there, Gil, it's all intentional. Everything that I do is strictly intentional around the activity that I'm doing.
And I like that you mentioned the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, right? Because that one thing that really, and I recommend it to everybody, but the reason I really fall in love with it, it's because probably like one of the few martial arts really that you're going to fail every day. And you have to be okay with that. You're starting, you're going to get your ass whooped multiple times every day. And if you're a person that doesn't deal well with rejection or failure, or like, they have to overcome every day, like, oh, this is not for me, this is too hard. And that's why I liked it, because because it's hard. That's why I like it, because you have to be mentally strong to knowing that oh man, I'm going to train for 2 hours. I'm going to get my ass beat for 2 hours. And it's very like ego crushing. If you have one, you're crushed, because you're gonna like, hey, I'm new at this and I'm gonna roll with this girl, and she's like 115 pounds and she's gonna whoop me. How is it even possible? I'm 180 pounds. Like, how is this even possible, right? So, it's, I like that fight. I like that. You have to go every day, you have to work hard, you have to overcome, and be okay with failure, because that's business, right? Like, you're not gonna succeed right off the bat, right? It might take a month, a year, 10 years. So you have to have that perseverance to keep going.
Well, I'm at the 10-year mark, and I can say there's still another 10 years to go. So, and I started when I was 38. So I didn't start jujitsu when I was younger. And you're absolutely right, is that it is very humbling. I'll train and then I'll go into some gym, and I can do the humbling sometimes, and sometimes I'm the one getting humbled. What Brad and I were talking about earlier was the idea that what Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu does, and a lot of the martial arts will do, where you have that high impact contact in the sport, is it helps you make a decision under stress. And because when we're under stress, we move to the lowest form of our training. And in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you can really feel that out, especially you go to a competition and that sort of thing. You learned all this fancy berimbolo, but when you go to the competition, guess what? It's a very simple single leg takedown, your side control, and now you're going to do a head and arm lock. And because it's just you've gone to your basic fundamentals. And that can apply a lot into business, because if we don't practice and train in business on a daily basis, and I believe training needs to be outside of the functional operation, just like you don't train when you roll, you're practicing when you're rolling, you're not learning and training. That comes when you go over lesson plans. And so the same thing needs to happen in your business world, is where are you training and where are you practicing your business life? Because you don't have those two things, all you're really doing is practicing on your customers in live events at high risk situations. And, the failure rate is quite high at that point.
Yeah, and just to share a little thing, and then I'll let Brad go, so we don't, shut them off like that. Even when I was doing really well, right? So I'm new, I'm white belt, I'm learning. I've been doing since March last year, so it's been almost a year now. And doing really well. The gym is awesome. I wanted to compete too, because I have a Hayabusa that sponsored me. They were giving me the clothes and all that, so I want to do well. I want to compete more for them than for me, but at the same time to overcome that fear of competition too, because you can snap your knees off, you can break arms. It's like pretty brutal. So when people talk about competition, it's like, yeah, you have to grow a pair of balls to compete, because it's not a piece of cake, right? And my first match, I absolutely got smashed for 5 minutes. The guy didn't submit me, but he broke me. One thing I learned is like you have to do a really good warm up, break a sweat before you go, because adrenaline kicks in and you have nothing, right? And I always consider myself with like great cardio. I have really great cardio. I train up 8,000 feet here in Big Bear. So, high altitude, great cardio, awesome. I go down the mountain to compete. First 5 minutes, and I'm absolutely dead. I got this. I don't even know if this guy's a white belt, because he was an eight-year wrestler, white belt, that competed against me, and he smashed me. He pinned me down. I couldn't even get out of there for 5 minutes. That was my first match. I had like 6 matches more after that. I'm done. I have nothing. I could barely walk from the mat to the seat, which was like 4 or 5 feet. I'm like, how am I going to even move forward from this? And then overcoming, and then go and win 6 matches on a row, and take first place at a gi and third place at no-gi. That's what I like about the overcoming fears, because then when you do them, then you're not scared anymore, and that's growth.
You pointed out, and I can solve your conundrum, by the way, of why you were so low in energy, and it has nothing to do with your cardio. The reason why you were so low in energy is because there's two patterns that we have in our brain. There's the fight pattern and the flight pattern. And fight shows up when we have significant confidence in our training, and flight shows up when we're experiencing something for maybe the first time, or we're in a situation of massive duress. So because maybe this was one of your first tournaments, what's going to happen in flight takes a lot more energy than fight, because fight, you can rely into training, where flight, it's the emotional dump that happens as a result. That is a massive situation. And that is when somebody goes for the first few white belt tournaments, that's exactly what happens. I've seen people who are just jacked to the nines, cardio for days. They can run around me tenfold. And I can go through 15, 20 matches, 30 matches without breaking a sweat, and they're done. And the reason being is because they showed up with flight, and they don't even think they think they're showing up with fight, but it's actually flight, because they haven't just built that roadmap. And what'll happen is, as your jiu-jitsu gets better and better, and that comes through time, you're going to find that your level to be able to go, you're going to rely less on your cardio, and you're going to rely more on your training.
That's good stuff. I feel left out now. I'm almost inspired, almost, but I'm not. I will say this one thing though, because it came to mind. My biggest fear, it was not competition, but it was needles. And so the day I injected myself with TRT because I got prescribed it, that was a big moment for me. But I do want to mention it just because there was a time in my life in my early 30s where I was like, yeah, that sounds great to have a business, to chase, to pursue dating and find my wife and all this, but I felt so low. And I'm not sure if you've ever dealt with yourself with low testosterone, Steve, or someone else, but it is the light switch of optimism, of vitality, of whatever for men. And when I had that low testosterone, despite sleeping 8 hours a day and having enough water and having grass-fed, grass-finished meat and vitamin D and sunlight and zinc and all this stuff. Everything that those Live Strong articles would say to do, I'm like, all right, download them all, do them all, and I still had very low testosterone. And some of the guys we work with, they start with us and they just feel so deflated, so defeated, and what's even more deflating is when you feel like you're doing the right things and you're not seeing the results. That's one of the worst feelings, is like, but I'm doing this and I feel horrible. I'm gaining fat even though I'm working out and eating salad. What's the point? What's the use? And so I just will say this: if you're a man out there, or you know a man in your life who just has more of a deflated kind of outlook right now, and they're quite healthy in their routines, there's a chance that they have low testosterone. So I just encourage you to tell this man or yourself to get your hormone panel tested via blood work and see where you're at. And there are a lot of great clinics out there that will actually help you with your diet and exercise, but then also prescribe TRT properly or other things that'll help. Because for me, that's been the biggest life changer over the last 10 years, is just getting on TRT, a small dose, but enough for me to feel my best and want to grow my business, want to date, want to live a great life filled with adventure and fulfillment. So I know that was out of left field, but
No.
mention
The
it.
thing is, there is I've taught this at a lot of places where it's the idea of asking for help. And a lot of people think asking for help is giving up, where I say it's the exact opposite. Asking for help is being so committed that you're willing to put your ego aside so you can accomplish the task at hand. And if you need help because your testosterone is low, that's not a fundamental flaw with you as a person. That just means your testosterone is low, and you just need something to fix that. And I have a lot of friends that the TRT brought them to another level in their relationships, in their business, in their health, that making that flip and making that switch was life-changing for them. So I'm 100% with people who are willing to, just say, hey, my hand's up. I'm ready to reach out, put my ego aside, put it in check, because I'm so committed to my goals. I'm going to ask for help.
And I want to say that Grant Cardone, I know you're part of his program. I believe he has 10X Health, or he has his own company that's dedicated to optimizing your health. And a lot of it is based on hormones. And when you learn about how much that controls our, not just sexual health, not just physical health, but our mental and emotional health. And you combine that with a lot of male loneliness, you combine that with what a lot of men are going through right now, you see that, wow, okay, get the testosterone up, get around guys that are healthy, that are driven, and your life will change and you'll feel fulfilled. You'll want to tackle these bigger challenges. And, it goes hand in hand, but just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love that topic for sure. As we start wrapping up, Gil, what I want to do is have you share how can people reach out to you guys and make the next steps in their money and make this next step in their health.
Yes, Steve, thanks so much for having us here. Has been awesome. You can reach out to empowerman.co. You can find our Instagram as well in our landing page. My Instagram is 1010 Gil Soares, GILSOARES. I don't know Brad's Instagram, I'll let him say it, but that's basically where you can find us, is our social media, and that's it.
So that's Empower Men. So EMPOWER men.co. And then your Instagram, we can find it on there too, I would imagine, right?
Yes,
Beautiful.
it's 10 Gil Soares.
Beautiful. Well, gentlemen, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you guys. The content is near and dear to my heart because I know the changes that you guys promote have made massive impact in my life, and I'm committed to sharing that message. So anything I can do to help share your message, I will definitely do that. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you so much, Steve. This was great.
Awesome.
Thanks, Dave.
Thank you. And with that, guys, thank you very much for tuning into the Money, Mindset, and Mentoring podcast. We'll see you on the next episode next week. We'll talk to you soon.